exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask for, King, according to the power that worketh in you. God is
just woke you up this morning. Started you on your way. Somebody shout praise. Praise in the morning. Praise in the evening. Praise in the noonday. Oh, praise. Macedonia, look at somebody, tell them, say, we got a new church. And we got a new praise. Oh, I'm glad to see the people of God great man of God. Almost. There we go. All right there. If you leave me there, sound person, just leave it right there. And don't mess with it no more. Leave it right there. Right there. All right. To this great man of God, Doctor. Come on, Dr. Jameson Hunter. Come on. Amen. To Bishop Kerry Bryant, who's here tonight. Come on, let's celebrate him tonight, will you? Our other ministers got to we have some deacons with us. Wave at us, deacons from Mount Enon. Some back in the back there. Trustees, come on, wave at us. Our ministers are on the other side. Wave over there. We're grateful to be here. Our cousin there, Pookie there, Ray there, Pookie. Anybody else, come on, wave at us right now. We're grateful tonight for your presence. If you don't mind, just for a few moments, let's look at Matthew chapter 14, verses 24 through 28. Of course, I'd like for you to read when you get time in its entirety. But I want to deal with this small portion of the text as it begins, of course, in the middle of the discourse and expression that Matthew is making at this particular time. However, I believe that we can make some sense of what he's saying at this particular portion of the text. At verse 24, he says, but the boat, somebody shout the boat. The boat. After Jesus had sent or constrained his disciples to go into or on to the other side, the text says that the boat, somebody shout the boat. The boat. Was now in the midst of the sea. It was distressed. It was troubled by waves. It was being tossed, come on, to and fro. For the wind was contrary. Is it in your Bibles? Yes. Verse 25 says, and about 3 to 6 a.m. in the morning, it says, the fourth watch of the night, he came unto them walking upon the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled. Somebody say troubled. Troubled. Saying, it is a ghost. They cried out for fear, if you please. Verse 27 says, straightway. Somebody say straightway. Straightway. Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid. Verse 28, and finally he says, Peter answered and said unto him, Lord, if it be thou, bid me to come unto thee upon the waters. Let's read on a little further. And he said, come on. And Peter went down from the boat and walked upon the waters to come to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, somebody say the wind. The wind. He was afraid and beginning to sink. He cried out, saying, Lord, save me. I want to talk about just for a few minutes, if you please, if you'll read back up to about verse 22 through about 30, you'll discover these elements are there. Preparatory storm. I want to talk about a preparatory storm. Somebody shout a preparatory storm. Somebody shout a preparatory storm. A couple of years ago, there was a ship, please, 290 feet, 4,000 ton cruise ship. I'm telling you, it was tossed and driven in the sea in the dangerous waters of the southern tip of South Africa, if you please, and the waves shattered the windows, if you please. The Clalea too was in a bad position. Somebody shout a bad position. In fact, this ship was in a storm. It had been wrecked, if you please. It had lost its communication, its ability to reach anybody, and the waters were extremely tumultuous. The waters were troubled at that particular time. And if you understand today, those of us who've gone on the cruise, we go and bask in the greatness of the great amenities. We get all the drinks we want to drink. We eat whatever we want to eat. We enjoy the great amenities of the ship. However, this ship was in a storm. This ship was tossed to and fro. In fact, some of the mariners, if you will, the boat riders, came up to give their testimony as to what had taken place on this particular ship. And on one night, they said that we are boaters. They said, we've never seen anything like this before. We've been out on the sea. The coffee pots and everything were flying around. So they asked if you will, that you go back to your cabin, and the 88 Americans on board, many of them retirees, were confined to their quarters while the other cruise ship, watch this, the National Geographic Explorer, comes out to their rescue, throws out a line, and brings them into a place of safety. Yes. However, this storm today rises, and this particular ship was in the midst of the storm, and the trouble was raging very badly. So, can you say amen to that? Amen. It was really rough. The boat was rocking, and the people were falling over. Cindy Williams, if you please, goes in and gives her testimony and says that it was a really hard walk. It was bouncy after the waters had calmed down. But at some point, Cindy declared it was a great experience. Yeah. She started to declare that, hey, I'm happy now simply because the ship had now been brought to safety. Have you ever been in a place in life where you had allowed things to become a little rocky, but as soon as things cleared up, you came over and you testified that God has made a way. God has made another way. And what happens is that these individuals find themselves in a place where they were experiencing the roughness of the ship. They were laughing now and playing around because the ship had now been brought into safety, and they were glad about what the Lord had done. They were laughing and giving each other high five, dapping each other. Somebody say hallelujah. But the passengers here, they paid about $9,000 a piece. They were injured, but they were glad to be at the shore. Oh, yeah. They were glad to be at a safe place. Can you say amen to that? I've discovered that preparatory storms don't have specific classifications. Somebody here may be Republican. Somebody else can be Democrat, liberals, come on, or intellectuals. The rich and the poor alike experience these storms. I don't care how much money you got in the bank. I don't care from whence you come. I don't care whatever it is that you hold in your possession. I'm here to tell you that if perhaps you hadn't been through a storm lately, that's right. Just keep on living and the storm will find you out. Just keep on living, and the storms of life have a way of finding who you actually are. Can you say amen to that? These people on this ship certainly didn't expect to encounter any difficulty, but it was an experience that made them give thanks, if you please. If they didn't give thanks to God, they gave thanks to somebody. At some point, somebody on that ship said, thank you. You only said it simply because the ship has found a place of safety. After being rescued from the raging sea, following, if you please, these moments of turmoil and difficulty, they found themselves giving thanks and praise to somebody. And one thing you'll understand as you look at this text, after Jesus will have taught his disciples and the crowd has been dismissed. Are you with me here? Jesus now in solace and solitude goes up on a mountain to pray. Can you say amen to that? And not only does he go on this mountain to pray, but he sends his disciples. In fact, the text specifically says that he made them get into the ship. Sometimes God will make you, y'all ain't said on here, God will make you get in a place where trouble is inevitable. Y'all ain't said on here. Sometimes God will confine you to a place where trouble has your name on it. Is there anybody here that's ever been in a place where trouble had your name on it? You didn't sign up for it, but God made you go through it in order to see just how good he was on the other side of it. If you don't mind shaking a neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, I didn't sign up for this, but God took me through this in order to show me how good he was going to be to me on the other side of this turmoil. Is there anybody here that can testify that you've been through the storm and the rain? You suffered heartache and pain. You didn't sign up for this, but you're grateful tonight that God has allowed you to go through it, because on the other side of it, you like David can declare weeping may. And do it for a night. In the morning, joy has got to come. Can I get a witness here? Somebody shout, joy has got to come. No matter what you are, who you are, you may be a big dog in the church. You may wear the best of clothes in the church. Everybody may know your name. Everybody may like your singing. Everybody may like your preaching. But I got news for you. Everybody will have to go through a storm. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody will go through a storm. I need to submit to you tonight that Jesus is not praying for his disciples' agenda to become his agenda, but he's praying that our agenda, somebody say our agenda, will eventually become his. So stop trying to impose your agenda over on God's agenda. Some things you have to learn how to just go through it. It was Jesus who embraced this Gethsemane experience. You do remember, don't you, and recall that Jesus had to go through Gethsemane in order to get to his destiny? Sometimes you have to go through some Gethsemane experiences in order to, come on, to find success on the other side of your dilemma. Here's what I'm trying to suggest to you tonight, is that if you ever get in a Gethsemane experience, what you got to do is learn how to shout when hell done broke loose. Even though you're in a bad place, you say, listen here, I'm going to give God some glory anyhow. I'm going to shout because God has me here, and if God brought me here, it may feel like he's nowhere present, but he's going to get me out of everything he's ever allowed me to get into. I'm talking to somebody that's in a storm tonight. Somebody right now, the seas are raging on you right now. But I'm here to tell you that God is trying to condition your mind and your heart to stop being so selfish. God's trying to condition our hearts to maintain and build a mentality and mindset that goes on to make sure that we tell other people about the story of Jesus Christ. Is there anybody here lately, you told the story that Jesus Christ still lives? That Jesus Christ still saves? Many people thought they came to revival to be entertained, but I'm here to tell you that this is time for us to work and put our hand, y'all real quiet. You should have invited somebody by now. Your row ought to be full without any incentives. I said your row ought to be full. Even if you don't win the pound cake at the end of revival. Your row ought to be full. Come on, even if you don't have anything to declare that you're going to have the biggest cup, what happens is God is trying to condition our minds to become evangelistic in every area of our lives. Tell somebody, I got a testimony tonight. If you preach to them, maybe you can preach to somebody when you get to work in the morning. And let them know that this storm that I experienced just wasn't for me. This storm prepared me for the ability to express to somebody else that through many dangers, toils, and snares, I've already come. If you take time tonight, you can discover some of the elements, because again, Jesus is not praying so that his agenda would turn into their agenda. God wants us to lift you up. He wants to lift you up to what he wants you to be. But sometimes in lifting, he has to take you down in the mud. Is there anybody knows the significance of tadpoles? I said, is there anybody here that knows the significance of tadpoles? Before a tadpole can become a frog, one thing he does is that in the midst of metamorphosis and his metamorphic change, you'll discover that the tadpole buries himself down in the mud. Y'all real quiet. And when he buries himself down in the mud, there are some changes taking place. Because one thing you got to understand about the mud is that the mud is uncomfortable. Being in the mud is green. In the mud, sometimes it's messy. Y'all real quiet about it. When you get in the mud, sometimes God confines you to an area that he's actually changing you in the process. So he puts you down in the mud and let all the lies flow. Let everybody say what they want. But you stay down there in the mud until God gets through with you. Because if you stay in the mud and in the storm long enough, when you come out of the mud and out of the storm, you're able to hop over every line. You're able to hop over every beam that tried to kill you, because you learned what it took to stay down in the mud and let God do what he was doing. somewhere. I might be down right now. But oh, you keep on watching. I'm going somewhere. My storms are preparing me for something greater. Look at the text. Jesus goes in to pray. I'm trying to get to point number 1. Help me, Lord. How to lay aside, watch this. When the Lord gets ready to lift you up, he has to take you down because he has to allow you to lay aside arrows. And your hubris, are you with me here? And all that pride. Then he declares, he says, he teaches you with Gethsemane experiences how to say, not my will. I'm talking about when you get in the mud, man, you got to learn how to say, not my will. When you ain't got a dime in your pocket, you got to say, not my will. When you ain't got no friends, everybody done walked off from you, you got to learn how to say, not my will. But thine be done, because here's what he's doing. He's reconditioning us. He's trying to transform our minds. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing, the reconstructing, the recalibrating of your mind. Man, you ought to be glad that God is not like man. Let me tell you why. Because when he puts you in a storm, God sometimes, watch this, there are those of us who get in storms and we have a tendency of not following GPS. Our spiritual global positioning system. Here it is. God says, make a right. Y'all listen here. By the time you get that and you realize that there's hell over in the right, we want to make a U-turn. Y'all listen here. But here's the grace of God that we talked about previously. We talked about the grace of God, and God's grace is just like GPS.
It sure is.
Man, one thing I like about GPS is that GPS, man, I've been on the wrong track a whole lot in my life. I ain't the only one in here that's been off track. But one thing about GPS is I discovered that GPS, even while you're going the wrong way, GPS never one time said, hey, stupid. When you're going the wrong way, the only thing that GPS does, watch this, it says recalibrate. Recalibrate. Recalculate. Are you with me here? Recalibrate. And the grace of God throughout your nasty and dirty experience, and don't y'all look at me in that tone of voice like I'm the only one in here that's been dirty and nasty and low down. And those of you who have taken wrong turns and you done things in your life, you done everything but died, baby. You hid all your children. You look like Deacon Jones, y'all ain't something here, and you lied and said it belonged to Deacon Edward. If there anybody here that knows, you can do some things and some nasty, dirty stuff. That's what the grace of God will do for you. God won't even talk about you when you're in a bad place. Tell somebody, recalculate. Recalibrate. He talks about it, if you will, not my will, but thine be done. Then God can move supernaturally in your life. In doing so, he gives his people a great example to follow. While Jesus is alone on the mountain praying, the disciples are experiencing rough weather. One thing about it is that when you get off on the wrong road, one of the greater amenities of being on the wrong road and not dying is you understand that somebody is praying for you. Man, it's exciting to know that somebody is praying for me. Even when I take wrong turns in my life. Jesus is now praying, and he's praying on the behalf of these individuals that he has to mentor and to build, if you please. He finds himself in this place where he tells us what this text is tailored to teach us. In fact, he says if we are persons who would embrace our storms, he says, especially those storms that are deemed preparatory, he says the first thing that it will do is strengthen your spiritual muscles. Y'all got a moment? The theological expression of the text expresses some of the historicity. And it says that while they were rowing out there on the boat, they were rowing, they were on a 5-mile journey. And it took them all night long. So now their rowing literally becomes exercise. Because they're rowing, but they ain't going nowhere. Have you ever been rowing, but getting nowhere? Have you ever been to the place where you've done everything right, but it seems like you can't get anywhere? You brought your tithes and your offering, but it still seems like you're a step behind. You've done everything right by God, and you allowed His instructions to be your guide, but it seems that you can't get anywhere. Can I help you to understand tonight? That God is literally strengthening your spiritual muscles. It was James who picked it up and he declared, he says, count it
all joy. Count it all joy. When you fall,
count it all joy. When you're rowing and hell is breaking loose. When you're rowing and soon as you get the dog in control, the cat starts acting up. Rowing. As soon as you fix the washer and the dryer breaks down. I'm talking to somebody, y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Rowing. As soon as you fix the van, the truck breaks down. Rowing. As soon as you get the red wig unnappy, y'all ain't saying here, the blue wig gets tangled up. I knew y'all would catch that one. I know where y'all's investments are, y'all. But it will strengthen your spiritual muscles. Scripture says in verse 24, the boat was now in the midst of the sea, distressed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. One thing you got to realize is that as soon as God sends you someplace, you're going to come in contact with contrary winds. And I admonish you tonight to really evaluate and validate your environment, because if you're not experiencing any contrary winds, it's a strong possibility that you may be contrary, in the words of Dr. Jameson Hunter, yourself. You may be walking with the devil instead of against his plans. Can I get a witness here? The disciples on a 5-mile journey. It seems that it's taking all night to get there. Meanwhile, they're having some difficulty making this journey that cut across the northern tip of the lake of Bethsaida, if you will, towards Gennesaret. They were fighting contrary winds, which simply implies that they were now having to row, not going anywhere. Not only were they having to row into the wind, but they were also being buffeted by high waves. Can we get a witness? So one thing you got to realize is that in the midst of those preparatory storms, many things can happen in the midst. You can come in contact with storms of financial failure, foolish friendships, fickle favors, y'all ain't saying yet. The wave of sickness, oh yeah, the wave of stupidity, slothfulness, and sometimes flood your way because you've done, not because you've done anything wrong, but you have the audacity to obey God. When you have gone to the extreme to obey God, there are moments that storms will break out in your life. Now, are you with me here? Just because you're in the will of the Lord. Following him does not inoculate you from experiencing difficulties of this world. I said just because you're saved does not mean that you're exempt from storms. I said just because you come to church on Sunday morning does not mean that you will not experience moments of difficulty. Can I get a witness here? Faithfulness is not immunity against preparatory storms. Trouble goes along with obeying the Almighty God. I'm here to tell you that when storms do show up, it may be a sign that you're on the right track. These storms are rehearsals for what takes place after the storm. Storms prepare you for the unknown. Somebody shout the unknown. In fact, this storm prepares these disciples for the end of the Gospels when they shift into the Acts of the Apostles. In fact, they have to face and endure Roman political power, Dr. Bryant. They have to endure Jewish political power. And let me tell you, when your muscles are strengthened, when you come on a storm and you're cool, calm, and collected, and you don't have to get no cigarettes, you ain't got to drink yourself to sleep. You're not pulling your hair out because you have in your arsenal that Jesus has built up in your soul. So that now when hell comes, instead of you fainting, you're able to stand firm, declaring that we've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord. Is there anybody here that knows that storms are equivalent to what cows experience? Somebody shout cows. Cows are significant because cows, if you please, if there's anything that you should research about cows, one thing you should research is the cud. Come on, somebody say the cud. C-U-D, cud. Watch this. One thing about the cud is that sometimes you'll notice that cows are out there grazing. They will have been there all day long, but they're out there grazing. Because while they're grazing, they're storing up. Because one thing about cows is that they have multiple stomachs. And sometimes you can discover and find them in a place where ain't no grass. But then you can see them chewing. One thing you got to understand about a storm is that a storm is equivalent to what the cow experiences with his grazing, because what he does while grazing, he goes in and grazes, and he sometimes finds himself in a storm and a dry place, but because he has the cud, and the operation of the cud is that some of the extra stomachs that he has, when the dry spells come, when trouble is raging all around and there's no grass to graze, the cow will go and regurgitate the grass that he previously intook. It is intake. Y'all ain't said it here. A word from my own lexicon. He then begins, come on, he regurgitates that grass, and you see him chewing when ain't no grass nowhere to be found. That's what God is doing with you in your storm. God is trying to strengthen your spiritual muscles so when you get into a dry place, you can learn how to celebrate Him. You begin to regurgitate what went on in the storm. And you lift your hands and start shouting and praising God. Look at a neighbor and say, neighbor, I thank God He took that man out of my life with his old raggedy self. Say, thank God He took that woman out of my life, because listen here, had He not done what He did, I wouldn't be able to appreciate what God is doing in this season. Can I get a witness? Point number 2, and I'm almost out of here. It strengthens your spiritual muscles, but then it enhances your understanding of God's providential timing. I said it enhances your understanding of God's providential timing. How many know God? You can't rush God. You can't slow God down. The old folk put it this way to say, you can't hurry God. You just have to wait and give Him time. No matter how long it takes. He's a God you can't hurry. He'll be there, don't you worry. 25 says in the 4th watch of the night, sometimes God waits till the midnight hour before He rescues you. I believe it was Watchman Nee. Somebody say Watchman Nee. A Chinese missionary went out on a journey on one occasion, and he had about 20 other missionaries with him. And when he went out on this journey, he discovered that out there where they were, they discovered that they did not have adequate bathing facilities. And they had only a few people that could swim. Y'all gonna help me preach this? While they were out there, one of the ones who operated as a lifeguard, somebody shout a lifeguard, stayed up on the banks watching for his fellow missionaries. And one night, this one fellow must have been zestfully clean. He was taking him a good bath. And it seems that he went too far out into the lake on this occasion. When he went out there, he found himself in deep water. And he was, come on, drowning. Y'all help me preach? And the one who operated as the lifeguard stayed on the wall for a while.
Yes, sir.
In fact, it seems that he watched this boy while he was struggling and gasping for breath.
Yes, sir.
He was going up and down, and then after a while, the guy seemed to have gone down for the last time. Soon as the lifeguard gentleman discovered that he had given out of energy, he jumped out into the water.
Yes, sir.
And went out to save this gentleman and brought him back to safety. And when Lee got back into the barracks where they were staying, he called this man to task. He says to him, he says, listen, he says, man, why did you sit there and watch him almost drown? The lifeguard said to him, he says, Lee, listen to me, man. He said, I know about lifeguarding. I know how to save lives. Y'all ain't selling here. He says, that boy, he says, if I had gone out there while he was still struggling. He says, not only would he have killed or drowned himself, but he would have drowned me too. Do you not understand that sometimes God waits until you stop trying to handle the situation? God sits still until you stop struggling and fighting. And then he'll send angels to come and pick you up, take you where you need to be. Won't even tell
Thank you.
nobody where he got you from. Before the foundation of the world, we discovered that learning God's timing, we understand that God is a God who operates in preparatory capacity. I say God operates in preparatory capacity. If you doubt my statement, why don't you look at the beginning? It says that before the foundation of the world, that there was a lamb already slain.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
In fact, he works in preparatory capacity, so much so that he gave Isaiah eyes to see centuries down the line. Isaiah never knew who Jesus was, but he called him a suffering Savior. He called him a silent Savior. He called him a sinless Savior. He went on to tell that the government was to be upon his shoulders. Did you hear me tonight? But he went on further and declared that Isaiah said he was wounded. I wish I had somebody here that knew what that meant. Tell somebody he was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised for our iniquities. And the chastisement of our peace was upon him. Shake somebody's hand and say, neighbor, with his stripes tonight, I am healed. Have I got a witness? I need to tell you tonight that delay in God's program always has purpose. Rick Warren declared that the delays never destroy God's purpose. Tell a neighbor, if you hold on and go through what the Lord has for you to go through. Yes, everything that you're looking for will come out on the other side. Did you hear me? I'm here to tell you that we have a God who is able to take us through storms and fire and come out not even smelling like smoke. Yeah, that's where they got it from. They said, I don't look like what I've been through. Did you hear me? And if you hang on in the storm, point number 3, Pastor Hill, is that those storms will teach us how to disregard destructive distractions. Did you hear me? Because when Peter got out of the boat, I heard Jesus say, come on to me. But as soon as Peter began to listen to what Mount Enon had to say, he started listening to what Macedonia had to say. And he went on the east side listening to Mount Pisgah. But God said, come on, shake somebody's hand and say, neighbor, when God calls you to something, you got to learn how to walk and not be bothered with other people. Don't worry about what they're saying, because God has given you your instruction. And I know I've got to leave you now, but I need to tell somebody that the God that we serve is strong and mighty. Have I got a witness tonight? The God that I serve, He's mighty in battle. Is there anybody here that can testify that through every storm that I've ever encountered, the Lord has brought me out? Have I got a witness tonight? Can anybody here shake somebody's hand and say, neighbor, I learned how to trust in God. Walked in this building, got a smile on their face. They got money in their pockets. They got on good clothes. But somebody came in this room in the midst of a storm. And if you don't learn tonight, if you're not tonight, find somebody that got a smile on their face. It's on the good clothes. Look like they got money in their pockets. Look like they got their hat about everything, but grab them by the hand atheist convention, and I heard that woman was cleaning up while they were having an atheist convention, and they kept on saying, God ain't real. Did you hear me? The woman listened. She turned up a vacuum one time and heard him again. Said, God ain't real. And she got tired there. Good God Almighty, tired of them saying that God wasn't real. So she went up on the stage and said, Mr. President, let me show you that God is real. Did you hear me? She went and got an orange and peeled that orange down in sections. And while she was standing with the atheist president, she took one of those peels and peeled out a section of that orange. She bit that orange and she said, it sure is good. And said, Mr. President, tell me if this orange that I have, if it's sweet or not. He said, you're a crazy woman. You're wasting our time. You crazy woman. You're causing us money. You know I can't tell you about that orange because I had tried it yet. Good.